I was just trying to live my life with Daniel. Quiet, simple, 5 years of marriage, no kids yet. But we were okay, we were fine, we made time for each other. Friday nights with cheap wine and Netflix. Weekend hikes like we used to do when we first dated. We laughed more than we fought. We worked hard, both of us. I did freelance work from home, and he had his office job, but we made it work, we made us work. And then there was Margaret and Susan. They lived close to close family estate in rural Pennsylvania. But they were always in our business. Margaret 73, always smelling like mothballs and old roses. Susan 45, unmarried, bitter like black coffee left out overnight. They showed up uninvited all the time. Hi Claire, just had a bit of time, figured I'd drop, and it wasn't a question, it never was. And they always came with something, wrapped in plastic wrap casseroles with a hair in it, or mac and cheese that looked wrong, tasted off. And once when Margaret wasn't looking, I swapped my plate with Susan's, and she took one bite and went pale, started shaking like her whole body was short-circuiting. I should have been scared, but I wasn't. I was angry. They hated me from day one. I wasn't legacy-minded. I wasn't trying hard enough to give them a grandchild. I didn't invest in family future. Margaret said that once, like I was messing with their retirement plan, not just living my own life every week, 3 times a week. They came over, poking around the house, opening my fridge, commenting on how much microwavable soup I ate, like it said something about my character. You're not feeding Daniel properly, Claire, Susan said once, while pointing at a half-empty cup of soup on the counter, and I just smiled, fake said thanks for the input, even though inside I wanted to scream. Margaret asked why I worked from home so much, as if I wasn't really working, as if a part-time wage wasn't worth respecting. Are you just watching TV all day? She laughed like it was funny, like I hadn't been on calls all morning, writing briefs, chasing invoices, doing everything I could to help keep this house running, keep us afloat. After that time, Daniel's bonus got delayed, and we had to dip into moving cost savings. And then 1 month later, Susan brought over chicken noodle soup, and there was a dead fly floating in it. I saw it before Daniel did, and she smiled like it was an accident, like I didn't know better. I cleaned it up, didn't say a word, but I stopped eating anything they brought over. I cooked everything myself from scratch, mashed potatoes, grilled chicken, cornbread. Daniel noticed, but didn't say much, just said thanks babe, this is good. And I kept going, kept cooking, kept working, kept pretending. But it's stacking up, all of it, every snide comment, every spoiled meal, every uninvited visit piling up behind my ribs, tight in my chest. And one day, it's not going to stay there. I don't know what I'll do, but it won't be smiling, it won't be swallowing, it won't be silence anymore. I was heating up microwavable soup again. I didn't care. It was lunch. I was slammed with work. The deadlines were back to back, my inbox overflowing. I had just 10 minutes to eat, and Margaret walked in like always, like she owned the place. Oh Claire, what's for lunch today? Her eyes already judging the plastic bowl on the counter. This again, she muttered loud, enough for me to hear, loud enough to sting. I said nothing, just stirred the soup, pretending not to notice her stare. She leaned over. It's not hard to make real food, you know, mac and cheese takes what, 15 minutes? She smiled, that dry smile, the one that says I'm better than you, I've always been better than you. I kept my mouth shut, I always did, but my hands shook a little. I was tired of always being the one holding it in. 3 times a week she came, no reason, no warning, just showed up, thought I'd drop by. I was bored like my time didn't matter, like my work didn't count. She parked herself in front of the TV like it was hers, turned on daytime talk shows. While I tried to answer emails in the kitchen, she asked about kids again. No baby yet. Like it was casual, like she wasn't prying into something that already kept me up at night. Daniel's the oldest, the only son, the one who's supposed to carry on the family name. Margaret never said it out loud, but she didn't have to. It was in every look, every question. Every time she brought up a neighbor's daughter-in-law who got pregnant so quickly, without even trying. What she didn't know, what she didn't ask, was that we had been trying for over a year, that I'd been going to a fertility clinic in San Francisco every month, that we were paying out of pocket, that each appointment felt like a test I was failing over and over again. She didn't know that my arms were bruised from blood draws, that I had folders full of hormone charts, ovulation trackers, that I cried every time I saw a pregnancy announcement online. But instead of asking how I was, instead of asking if I was okay, she looked at the soup in my hands and said, "No wonder Daniel looks tired. You don't feed him right." Susan nodded next to her like some backup chorus. "Honestly, Claire, I don't know what he sees in you. It's not like you clean either." I wanted to throw the bowl. I wanted to scream. I wanted to tell them about the injections, the pills, the disappointment, the shame. But I just smiled. I always smiled. I finished the soup in silence. Margaret stayed another hour. Susan rifled through my fridge again. I went back to work pretending I was focused. But inside I was shaking again, shaking not from fear, not from sadness, from anger, deep, slow, rising anger. That's been building day by day, week by week, visit by visit, and one day it's going to come out, and they won't see it coming. Margaret looked me straight in the eyes and said it again. "Maybe Daniel's got someone else out there. Can't really blame him. When his wife can't even make a decent meal." I stood there holding a plate of grilled chicken, mashed potatoes, and cornbread like it mattered, like anything I did would ever be enough. Susan didn't even look up from her phone, just mumbled, "Or maybe she's just not woman enough." I didn't answer. I never answered, not because I didn't want to, but because I knew they were waiting. They wanted me to snap. They wanted me to scream back so they could say, "See, she's the problem, not us." I swallowed it again and again and again. Every time they brought up the baby, every time they said Daniel deserved better, every time. Susan rolled her eyes at my clothes or laughed at my career. "Oh, freelance? Must be nice to get paid for doing nothing all day." We still went to the family estate in rural Pennsylvania because Daniel thought it was important, because he missed his childhood home, because they're just being themselves. "Claire, don't take it personally." He sat back, relaxed, drank his coffee, while I stood in the kitchen helping Margaret, because of course she always needed help. "Claire dear, can you take this over to the neighbors, a case of Bud Light? We owe them from last week." "Why not, Susan? Why not the actual daughter?" Margaret smiled thin and tight. "Well, she's tired, you know." And then softer, "Besides, you're so much younger." I took the beer box, walked to the next house like a delivery girl, like this was normal, like this was what marriage meant. And when I came back, Margaret was laughing with Susan like I just made their day easier, like I didn't even exist as anything but arms and legs. I didn't say anything, just smiled fake and hollow and sat at the edge of the couch while they talked around me, talked about me, not to me. Then came the comments again. "You're 32, right? Clock's ticking. You sure Daniel's not seeing someone at work? I mean, no offense, but maybe it's not just bad luck, maybe it's just you." I felt my throat close up like something was stuck, like I couldn't breathe, but I said nothing again. Because if I started, I wouldn't stop. If I let it out, it would all come crashing down. Every insult, every chore, every fake favor, every word they used to slice at me, while smiling like it was a joke. I looked at Daniel. He was scrolling on his phone, not hearing, not seeing, not knowing. And I sat there beside him, feeling 1,000 miles away, in a house that would never be mine, in a family that would never see me as theirs. And I kept smiling. But inside something was breaking, and it's not going to be quiet when it finally shatters. I heard Susan's voice before I saw her. "So Claire, and Daniel doing okay? Still no baby?" She said it like it was casual, like she wasn't twisting the knife. Margaret laughed the last time I saw her. She was eating cup of soup again. I wonder if she even cooks or if she just works all day. And then quieter, but not quiet enough. "No wonder there's no baby if she can't even make dinner." I froze in the hallway, heart pounding, throat burning, pretending I wasn't hearing this, pretending I wasn't used to it, even though I was used to being the punchline. Daniel heard it too. This time he stepped and said something finally. "Claire takes care of everything. She works. She cooks. She's doing her best, and I help too." He said it like he meant it, and I almost believed him. I wanted to believe him. But I couldn't shake the feeling that this wasn't the first time this had happened, that while I was out, while I was working, while I was trying to keep up, they were here gossiping, laughing, breaking me down one line at a time. Another day, another visit, another fake reason to drop by. We brought over a casserole. We made too much, and I had to let them in, because I always had to let them in. I couldn't say no, not to them, not to Margaret, not to Susan. They came in like they owned the house. "This is such a lovely home, Claire." Margaret smiled tight. "You work for a full-time company again now?" "No," I said carefully. "I'm a freelance contractor right now, working from home." Susan made that face, that smirk that meant I wasn't good enough. "Must be nice for someone like you. Pretty girls always land on their feet, right? Someone probably just hired you for your face anyway." I said nothing, just smiled tight, poured the tea, served it like some hostess in my own home. My own home where I couldn't breathe. Susan always circled back to how I looked, like it hurt her to see me happy, to see me married. Like every word was dipped in jealousy and spit. You sure you're not using Daniel? I mean, you don't even have kids to show for it yet. Margaret pretended to scold her. Now, Susan, don't be mean. But she was smiling like she agreed, like she always agreed. They stayed an hour, maybe more. I cleaned up their mess when they left. They never helped. Never even offered, just dumped their leftovers and criticisms like it was normal. Like I was built to take it. And Daniel, he said thank you when they were gone, said, "You handled that well," like it was a performance, like it was applause worthy to survive them. I smiled at him, but I didn't feel anything, not anger, not pride, just tired. Tired of always holding it, and tired of being the target, tired of smiling when what I really wanted was to scream. And one day I will. Margaret walked into the kitchen without asking again, opened every cabinet. Like she was looking for something to judge, something to criticize. She said, "I'll grab some plates." I stood up right away. "It's okay, I'll get them, just relax." But she waved me off. No, it's fine, I know my way around." And then she started opening everything, not just the plate cabinet, but every drawer, every shelf, like she was doing an inspection. She didn't need to open the spice rack, but she did. She didn't need to check the under-sink drawer, but she did, and I knew what she was doing, checking for dust, grime, signs of laziness, signs that I wasn't good enough. But there was nothing to find, because I cleaned, because Daniel helps, because we're not slobs, and because I know Margaret is always looking, always ready to say something that sounds polite but cuts like a knife. She didn't say anything this time, though, maybe disappointed, maybe annoyed. She just grabbed 3 plates without a word, then walked back to the living room, with Susan trailing behind, holding a container of casserole. "We brought too much again, hope you don't mind." It wasn't even lunch or dinner, it was 3 p.m. And cold casserole wasn't something anyone asked for, but I still smiled fake and tight, because I knew the game: eat it or be the villain. I sat down, I picked up my fork, and just as I was about to take a bite, I saw them both watching me, grinning like they had a secret, and something in me froze. I looked closer at the casserole mashed down into the corner of the plate, and there it was, a long white hair curled like thread, and I knew it wasn't mine. I looked up, and Margaret smiled wider. "What's the matter? Not eating?" Susan laughed. "You're not saying you can't eat something Mom made, are you?" I swallowed hard, said, "No, of course not, just a little hot," even though it wasn't even warm anymore, even though I was starting to shake inside. They kept watching, waiting, like it was a test, like they'd finally caught me in something. I took a bite anyway, mouth dry, throat tight. I didn't chew, I just swallowed. I didn't taste anything. Just the feeling of something wrong, of something crawling under my skin. And they laughed again, soft, like they weren't even hiding it. Back in our day, we ate what we were served, no questions. I didn't answer, I just smiled again, that same empty smile I always used, like armor, like duct tape holding everything together. Daniel wasn't home, he was working late, and I wondered if he'd even believe me if I told him, or if this was just going to be one more thing I swallowed alone, one more thing. I pretended didn't happen, until I couldn't anymore. I picked at the edge of the plate like I could find a spot that felt safe, a piece that hadn't been touched by whatever they'd done. Susan was barely holding back laughter, biting her lip. Margaret wiped her hands slowly, like she'd just finished something satisfying. And now she was waiting to watch. It wasn't just one time, it was never just one time, it was small things. First cold stares, snide remarks, then casserole with a hair in it, mac and cheese with something white and strange powdered like detergent, then a fly in the soup, and now this. Margaret called that morning. "Come by the family estate tonight, we made dinner." I told her I had work, I was behind on deadlines. I was trying to finish a project for a new client. She didn't care. "You work from home, Claire, it's not real work anyway, you can do that anytime. Just admit you don't want to come, you don't care about family." Her voice was sharp, her tone sweet and bitter like lemonade that had been sitting in the sun too long. I didn't want to go, I never wanted to go, but how do you say no to that without it turning into another war? How do you defend yourself when they twist every word? So I went. Daniel stayed late at work again, and I drove alone through the quiet streets of rural Pennsylvania toward that house I never felt welcome in. Walked in to see both of them smiling. Already table set, mashed potatoes, grilled chicken, and cornbread. Looked normal, looked safe, looked like they were trying, but their eyes gave it away. They were enjoying this too much. Margaret placed a bowl of chicken noodle soup in front of me. "A little something extra just for you," she said it like a joke. But I felt the cold crawl up my spine. Susan poured. Sweet tea, leaned and whispered, "We really do appreciate all you've done for Daniel. You know he's our treasure." And she laughed like that meant something. I waited for them to take the first bite. They did, and I followed slowly, carefully. Something felt off again. I lifted the spoon, dipped it into the soup, and paused. Something was floating, something wasn't right. I looked closer and saw its small, curled, still wings spread and legs stiff. It was a dead fly. I dropped the spoon. It clattered against the bowl, loud, sharp. "What the hell is this?" I heard my voice, too loud, too angry, to real. Margaret didn't flinch. "What do you mean? It's just soup." Susan leaned in. "Don't be dramatic, Claire. It's not like you've never seen a bug before." I sat there shaking, hand clenched under the table, eyes burning, not from the soup, not from the heat, but from holding it in too long, too many times. I looked at them both, smiling, smirking, proud, and I thought, they really think I won't break, but they don't understand. I already am. I stared down at the bowl of chicken noodle soup. The dead fly floating, belly up, legs curled, wings stuck to the surface, and I thought, no, this isn't happening. This can't be real. But it was real, and they were watching. Margaret and Susan trying not to laugh, smug, like they were proud of themselves, proud of what they'd done. Something cracked in me right then, but I held it tight. I couldn't scream, not yet. I couldn't let them say I was emotional, ungrateful, disrespectful. I said, soft, calm to calm, "Actually, I've been watching my sodium, so I'll pass on the soup. Feel free to enjoy it yourselves." I reached for their bowls, trying to hand the soup back, polite, detached, like none of this had happened, like I didn't see the fly, like I wasn't shaking. Susan's hand shot out fast. "Don't bother, I don't want it." Her voice was sharp and cold. "I saw you already touched it. I'm not drinking something you gave up on." I looked at her, stunned. "I didn't even take a sip. It's exactly how you served it." Margaret smiled thin. "Then it's wasteful to leave it, isn't it, Claire? Why don't you finish it if you care so much about appearances?" I could feel the pressure building in my chest, burning behind my eyes, and I smiled. But it wasn't kindness, it was steel. And then Susan went there again. "Still no baby, huh? Maybe Daniel just doesn't see you as a woman anymore. Maybe he wants someone softer, more feminine, someone who cooks more than just microwavable soup and doesn't work all day like she's trying to be a man." They knew that was the line. They knew that was the wound they always hit. I stood up, slow, steady. "I'm sorry I can't give you a grandchild yet. I really am. I wish I could. But you know what's sad?" I looked them both in the eye. "Daniel and I are your only shot, the only ones who can give you a legacy, so maybe don't poison the woman carrying it." Susan's face turned red, fast, furious. She stood so fast her chair screeched back. "You think you're better than me because you're married, because you have a house, because you sit there like you're not just some glorified temp who lucked into my brother." She reached for a plate like she was going to throw it, like she'd lost the last bit of control. And I didn't even flinch. "I just said you want to be respected. You should try earning it without bitterness." Margaret grabbed Susan's arm, tried to pull her back, but it was too late. Susan was yelling, shaking, plates rattling, and I stood there in the chaos. Finally still, finally honest, finally done pretending. And I didn't say sorry. Not this time. I left early. I said I had work, which wasn't a lie, but even if I didn't, I would have left anyway. I couldn't stay, not after that, not after what they did, not after what I finally said. I stood up, I looked them both in the eye, and I walked out. "Thanks for dinner," I said, voice steady, stomach sick, hands clenched so tight. My nails dug into my palms. "I've got deadlines," and Margaret smiled to sweet. "Of course, dear, we know how busy you are with your little contract work." Susan didn't say anything, just glared, still red-faced, still shaking like she hadn't gotten the last word, and it burned her alive inside. After that silence, total silence, no calls, no texts, no visits, no casserole, no poison soup, nothing. And for a while, it felt like air, finally air, like breathing was possible again. Daniel didn't ask questions, not really. He just said, "You okay?" And I said, "I'm fine," and we left it at that. We had dinner, just us. We watched shows. We sat in the backyard under the string lights. He hung last fall. He held my hand again. He laughed again. I remembered what it felt like to be married without suffocating. 1 month later, the silence broke. Margaret called during dinner, not just to me, not just to whisper poison this time. She called while Daniel was home. "We made pasta. Why don't you both come over?" And she said, "Both," and that alone felt off. But Daniel said yes, too fast, too casual. Maybe it'll be different now, maybe it blew over, he said, and I didn't believe it. But I went. We drove to the family estate, quiet streets, heavy air, the kind of stillness before a storm. And I couldn't shake the feeling in my gut. Margaret greeted us at the door, smiled like nothing had happened. Come in, I'm making pasta today, something simple, just wanted to share it with you too. And that word again, simple, always used like a knife. Like she was better for doing less, like effort was weakness. She boiled pasta sauce from a packet. Microwaved meat sauce, poured it over like it meant something. And I kept thinking, why this, why now? I sat at the table, Daniel beside me, and she tried to be normal to normal. It wasn't right. Then she said, new phone case, to me, like she cared, like she noticed. I nodded stiff, yeah. Susan leaned in, oh, and a ring holder to wow, must be nice to have so much free time for accessories. I showed them how it stood up on its own, how I watched videos while cooking, how it made things easier, and Daniel smiled, that's smart, I should get one too. And they smiled back. But I knew something was coming, because when things go quiet in that house, it's not peace, it's planning. And I wasn't going to be caught off guard again. We were sitting at the table talking about nothing really, the kind of small talk you do when you're trying not to notice the weight in the room, the way Margaret's smile didn't reach her eyes, the way Susan hadn't looked at me once since we walked in. She was called from the other room, and when she came out, she glanced at me sharp, like a warning, like a grudge still burning. She hadn't forgotten what I said last time, not even close, and I knew if she could throw something at me again, she would. Then the spaghetti came out for plates, one for each of us, steaming with red sauce, already sprinkled with grated cheese, and something else, something powdery and too white. Margaret said we added Parmesan, but if it's not enough, you can always add more. Her voice sweet, her smile wide to wide. She set the plate in front of me. I looked at it, and something twisted in my stomach. The powder on top wasn't Parmesan. It was too fine to even. There was a sheen to it that didn't melt right, like it wasn't food at all. Daniel stood up, gonna run to the bathroom before we eat, he said casually, and left the room. And the second he was gone, Margaret turned away. Susan looked down at her phone, and I moved. I switched my plate with Susan's in 3 seconds, maybe less, fast, smooth, quiet. Daniel came back, sat down. Margaret beamed, before it gets cold, everyone dig in. And we did. Except I watched. I watched Susan pick up her fork, swirl the pasta, like she always did, jab at it like she didn't care, and take a big bite. One bite. Then her hand dropped her fork, her eyes went wide, her body froze. And then she gasped. Foam started to pool at the corner of her lips. She reached out, knocked over her water glass, and slumped sideways like her body just gave out. Daniel yelled, Susan, jumped from his chair, tried to hold her up, shaking her, yelling her name. She didn't respond. Margaret screamed, oh my God, call someone now. I'm calling. Daniel shouted, his voice breaking, already his hands fumbling for his phone. I sat still. I watched it all, like it wasn't real, like it was a movie, like I wasn't even in the room. Margaret's face turned pale, panic rising. She didn't even look at me, she couldn't. Daniel got through, gave the address, said words like seizure and unresponsive and police. And I kept sitting, still, quiet, breathing. Susan on the floor, foam on her lips, twitching, eyes glassy and wide. And I kept breathing, because this time I didn't swallow it. This time it wasn't me who fell. Susan survived. She made it through the seizure. They said the reaction was fast enough. The ambulance came just in time. No long-term damage, no permanent symptoms. Just a few days of monitoring, and a story none of them would forget. The police came that same evening. They took the leftover spaghetti, boxed it up, carefully labeled it evidence. Daniel stood to the side, shocked, quiet, like his body was there, but his mind wasn't. Margaret tried to stop them. This is all a misunderstanding. That food was for family. We don't need this kind of trouble. But her voice shook too much, and the officer didn't buy it. They took the plate anyway, said they had to check. And after that, Margaret went silent, completely silent. She didn't cook, she didn't speak, she didn't come by the house 3 times a week anymore. She barely left her room at the family estate. Daniel said she's depressed. Claire, maybe guilty, maybe just scared. I didn't answer. And then something worse happened. A knock on the door late afternoon. 2 officers, badges drawn, clipped tones. We're here with a warrant for arrest, attempted murder. Daniel froze. What? He looked at me like he hadn't heard right, like they were talking about someone else. But then they looked at me, and I realized. Margaret talked. She told them I did it. Told them I poisoned the plate, told them I snuck something in while she wasn't looking, told them I must have switched it. Daniel said, "Claire?" And I said no, but I said it calm, not afraid, not desperate. I pulled out my phone, the one with the new phone ring, the one I had placed on the table standing upright angled just right the day of the dinner. I opened my gallery, scrolled, tapped play, and there it was. Margaret in the kitchen opening a packet, sprinkling something over one plate. Not all for just one, the one that ended up in front of Susan. Susan entering the room, sitting down, smiling, smug, not knowing. Susan taking a bite, seconds later, the foam, the panic, the collapse. The whole thing. Captured. Without a word, I handed it to the officer. And then I pulled up a folder of photos, chicken noodle soup with a dead fly casserole, with a long white hair, powdered mac and cheese, Susan's lipstick mark on my teacup the day she told me I wasn't woman enough. Daniel didn't speak. He just stared at the screen like he couldn't breathe. Margaret was arrested the next morning. Susan refused to testify, refused to speak, wouldn't even answer the door when reporters came. And I stood in the quiet kitchen of our home in Portland, phone in hand, coffee growing cold, knowing they tried to destroy me. But I kept the receipts. Margaret's face had gone pale, the kind of pale that doesn't fade with breath or time. The kind that clings to skin like guilt. She didn't speak when they showed her the video, didn't deny it, didn't even look at me. Her hands shook, but her mouth stayed shut. Until they put her in the car, and even then it wasn't regret, it wasn't shame, it was blame. This is her fault, she screamed from the back seat window. Half open, hair pulled tight against her cheeks. She twisted everything, she poisoned us, she always thought she was better than us. The neighbors came out, front doors creaked open, people stood on porches, pretending they weren't watching, but watching every second, some with crossed arms, some whispering to whoever stood beside them. Everyone saw the flashing lights, everyone heard the words attempted murder. And in the middle of it all, Daniel stood still, not touching me, not moving, not saying a thing. His mother in handcuffs, his sister collapsed in a hospital bed. The illusion shattered like glass under boots. Later I told him everything. The photos, the recordings, the long quiet prep, the nights I pretended to sleep, but lay awake thinking, if I didn't document it, no one would ever believe me. The hair in the casserole, the dead fly in the soup, the powder on the mac and cheese, the whispers, the manipulation, the pressure to be less so they could feel like more. And Daniel cried, not for them, for himself, for not seeing it, for not protecting me, for not believing sooner, for letting it get this far. Susan gave her statement from the hospital, said she just wanted to scare me, said she didn't think it would go that far, said she didn't know the powder was dangerous, didn't even know what it was, thought it'd just give me a stomachache. Said she snapped because I made her feel like nothing just by existing, just by being the wife. She wasn't, just by giving Daniel a life she couldn't understand. The truth spread faster than fire in a quiet neighborhood in Connecticut. By the next morning, they all knew who did what, who lied, who almost died. Margaret was denied bail, Susan was discharged, but couldn't look anyone in the eye. She stayed at the family estate, curtains always drawn, the grocery deliveries left on the porch, because she couldn't even walk to the store anymore. She couldn't afford to move, the moving costs were too high, and her part-time wage wasn't enough. She told a neighbor that one day, loud enough for others to hear, that she wished she could leave, but she was stuck. People stared, people whispered, people judged, and for once it wasn't me. Daniel had been offered a transfer to Seattle months ago, but turned it down because he didn't want to leave Margaret and Susan, because he was the oldest, because it didn't feel right. But now, he signed the papers without hesitating. We moved 2 weeks later, left the quiet streets, the bitter house. The cold casseroles left it all behind. Our new home in Portland was small but clean and quiet, and ours, just ours. We unpacked, slow cooked together, sat on the couch with our feet touching, no voices yelling, no footsteps. We didn't expect no more, watching the front window, wondering if they'd show up uninvited. And then 2 weeks in, I found out I was pregnant. After all the years, after the tests and the tears and the appointments and the failures, a quiet little plus sign showed up on a Tuesday morning in a bathroom that still smelled like paint. Daniel cried again, but different this time. I haven't told anyone back there, not yet, maybe not ever. They wanted a legacy, they wanted a name carried on. And now they might never see it, because they tried to break me. But all they did was burn the bridge, and I never looked back.